So, have you ever caught yourself talking to yourself aloud? Well, maybe you don't do that. I kind of think of people that are old that do that. But what about self-talk that happens in your head? We all do that. Probably all do that. We have more thoughts than we can ever imagine going through our head almost constantly. And if we have a scenario that happens to us that we don't like, that doesn't sit well with us, those thoughts are racing through our heads. And often we're assuming things that didn't actually happen or that the other person doesn't really think. And we kind of twist it up. I remember when I was 11, I had to walk to school. And my teacher happened to walk to school also. And sometimes she'd catch up with me. I don't think I ever had the nerve to catch up with her. So because that could happen once in a while, I would have, when I wasn't walking with her, I would have all these scenarios of possible conversations going on in my head. And that's like a good example of what self-talk can be. I was talking to her, I was making up the answers she would have and the whole thing. And it can be negative though. And sometimes it's based on fear. So this is how to stop fear-based negative self-talk. Now that's quite a mouthful. And I want to talk to you about that today. I'm going to be doing a series on self-talk. I'm going to be doing, I don't know, a few videos, whatever it ends up being. And I hope you join me and you find them and like them, because this is part of a course, or some of the content is from a course that I'm also doing that has a lot more stuff than just on self-talk. All kinds of stuff to help you live with grace instead of the chaos and the all the kind of things that keep you from walking in victory and knowing what your true identity is in Christ. So if you want to stop fear-based self-talk, then these tips will help you overcome living a fear-based life controlled by your emotions. Because if fear is gripping you, it's going to affect your emotions, that's for sure. So you may be young, or you may be in your second half of life, and sometimes what I see is these things can get out of control as we get older and older. And I've seen people that are old that have a good mental mindset on things, and some that don't. And some they can't help. Dementia's not, I wouldn't say something that you can really help. But I just mean, we think of older people sometimes as being grumpy or out of sorts, and sometimes even in the marriage they get more outspoken of just these little jabs at each other, that they even do it when they're out in public. And I've come a long ways in my marriage, which means I've come a long ways in myself and how I act, hopefully, so that I feel that I can be sharing with you some of these things. But I've not gotten into that mindset that you can get into when you're older, and you can start allowing things back into your life that you actually got control of as a believer at some point before. I've seen this happen. I don't want it to be happening in me, and I want to encourage you to walk with Jesus the whole of your life. And so that's one of the reasons I'm sharing these things with you today. So if you're a wife or a mom, I don't care whether you have young children growing up still, or like if you're like me and my children have already grown, some of the things that you do might not have had a good impact on them. We all are like that. I had to realize that. And other times they'll blame things on you, but yet they have to take their life into control and allow Jesus to control their lives. Into control in the sense that they allow God to work in their lives, and they choose to stop doing some of the things that they're doing, and the self-talk that causes them to be making some of the choices that they're making. We all have to answer to Jesus. So many women are gripped with fear that holds them back, and that keeps them from moving forward and becoming who God created them to be. The struggle is real and often hidden to others. We don't always let people see. Sometimes we can act in a way that others don't see it. And I hope you have your mocha or coffee or tea. This happens to be mocha I made. It's too nasty. I don't want to go out. And so I've made this my coffee shop. I made it where I don't have to go out. I have something similar. And I just invite you to pause the video long enough to get something good to drink, nice and warm and cozy with me. I often say that on my blog, so I want you to do that with me. So, negative self-talk is a common problem that affects many women. I don't know about men. Their brains are wired totally different than mine. So, negative self-talk can be defined as an inner voice or dialogue that we have with ourselves, kind of like I had with my teacher, and even though she wasn't there with me. I think only once or twice that she actually walked with me to school part of the way. She was like a favorite teacher, dear to my heart. She loved the Lord too, and it wasn't a Christian school. Negative self-talk can stem from fear-based thoughts and beliefs that can hold us back from achieving our goals, all those goals that you just made in January, or from living a fulfilled life. Okay, I'm in my 60s, getting to the closer and closer to 70, and I don't want to live a life that is just, doing whatever I want, watching YouTubes all day, or just doing whatever whim or nothing that I want. And I want it to be fulfilled. I want it to be fulfilled for others. And in areas where I'm held back and can't reach my children because there is a barrier, I want to at least pray for them. And so that God can reach them even when I can't. God can speak to their hearts. So if you have situations like that, it's all good if you pray. And just to digress a little bit, sometimes our kids, when they're grown, they've got very busy lives, and we can kind of get in their way by being that protective mom that we were when their kids were growing up. They need their space, and they need the chance to allow God to speak into their lives at this point. And they'll come back to you. Mine come when they want something. So thankfully, there's some steps that you can take to help rewire your brain, because we all have thoughts, and we all might have positive thoughts, like the positive thoughts I had towards my teacher. But when we get into the point where we have negative thoughts because maybe our parents hurt us in some way, or maybe we have a relationship with our husband that is hurtful emotionally, and we can start having negative thoughts go in and around that. Even a small argument or disagreement, which is usually a misunderstanding, where it wouldn't happen if you understood each other, but usually because I think differently than my husband, we can have misunderstandings and not get each other. So that you can let those negative thoughts go into conversations or thoughts about that person that can be very destructive, because it may not be true about that person. We can assume that that person thinks this and this and this because we perceive it that way, when chances are it's not even true. I want you to have an understanding of fear-based negative self-talk, and what that really is. And first of all, it's important to understand how fear-based self-talk works. Okay, fear is a natural response to danger or a perceived threat you might have. But when it becomes irrational, it starts controlling our thoughts, and it can be detrimental to our well-being. I mean, there are women who get so strung out on what they're thinking, their thoughts that are incorrect about people around them, or even maybe it's based on some reality of what their husband did to them, maybe a divorced husband, maybe a husband that was abusive, and you aren't handling those things correctly. You're the one that's hurt, even though he's the one that did it, and you can be worse off than he is because of your response. And so then, as a person gets older, if they don't deal with those thoughts, they keep happening, and it can get way out of control. And maybe you've seen that in some people that you've known, especially women. Not that men don't ever get grouchy, but we're not talking about men. We're seeing what we can do to change ourselves. Where fear-based negative self-talk comes in, it feeds off these irrational fears that we have. It creates responses that often come out of words towards those we love. When you think things, it says in the Bible that what you think in your heart, this is my paraphrase, what you think in your head, it comes out through your mouth. Our thoughts turn out to be actions, and a lot of times our actions are actually words, or maybe the first thing that happens, and we think we can think those things without it happening, and ultimately it happens. Sometimes it's just because I repeat what I'm thinking to my husband, and that is probably not even that good, even though we're not going to repeat it anywhere, because we're practicing those negative thoughts and putting it into practice, so that maybe it just keeps us from wanting to reach out to someone who needs it, that we thinks this way, and they don't. Or maybe they do. So either way, it is an ideal situation when you are having all this stuff going on in your mind. My intention in sharing this raw truth with you is because I want to see growth in my life and in yours. So firstly, I want to trust God more. That's the first thing I want to do. That's key. And grow into the woman that God has created me to be. And don't you want that for yourself too? So God never intended me to be driving my life from my emotions. And when I was younger, my life was driven from emotions. I don't know how I could have gotten around that without some of the things that we know today about emotions. We know that can be caused by hormones. We have supplements that can help that. That was starting to be available, but I didn't know much about it, only a little bit. And so my heart goes out to you if you're dealing with some of the things that I dealt with when I was younger. So the first thing that we need to do is figure out what's driving your life. And in my case, I realized that I was driving my life. Even as a believer, we can be holding on to that wheel. And our desires, we can just be in control. Instead of directing my decisions on who is controlling my thoughts and words and emotions, and the who is Jesus or the Holy Spirit. So first, we have to give up the wheel. And there's 4 little things we can do. Give up the wheel. Give your fear to God. Allow God to be in the driver's seat, and trust God with your present situation. And it's not going to necessarily remove the present situation, but it'll make the present situation better. So it's not going to happen as long as I am sitting in the driver's seat of my life, calling the shots on what emotion, in this case fear, that I allow into my headspace. A fear-based negative self-talk can have on your life is this. So when you're filled with fear, even if it's seemingly a small area of your life, it has an impact on negative self-talk. Okay, my example is that when I ride with my husband, if we're going to a congested area, I can get kind of too nervous. I remember my grandmother doing this, and I used to think, what is she doing that for? But you have to realize my grandmother, when she was young, never rode in the car. My grandmother was quite a bit older, right? And I'm the youngest in my family, which makes her age-wise far removed from me. So she didn't have cars. Most people didn't have cars at first unless they had lots of money. There were cars, but then also they lived in Brooklyn. So you either walked back then or you took the subway. And so when my husband drives me down into New Jersey where it's congested, or when we were in California and the roads are huge, I can get really nervous because, I blame it on this, was in an accident, minor one, and it could have been bad, but it wasn't. But it made me nervous after that. Or at least that's what I can contribute it to. Good excuse, right? But there's no trust involved. No trust in my husband. No trust in God. It gets in my headspace. The thoughts come out into words, drive slower. What speed are you going? Maybe you don't have that problem, but you might have another one. So that's a simple scenario. okay? And you can have negative thoughts going on in your head, fearing that you'll have an accident, fearing that whatever will happen. Okay, that's not helpful to you. And you might try to keep your thoughts to yourself, but eventually they come out in words, out of your mouth. Thoughts that turn into actions often tumble out in words. Okay? And fear-based negative self-talk can also hold you back from reaching your full potential. Remember I said the goals you made or whatever, the word you chose, I choose a word, it can have an effect on that so that you can't get the full potential out of that word or your goals for your business or your mom life that you might have, and that you're held back. God's not holding you back. You're holding you back, yourself back, and I'm holding myself back. And it can cause you to doubt yourself, question your abilities, and make excuses for not taking actions because you blame it on that. I'm afraid. I don't think I can do that. I'm not enough. I'm too old. I'm too young. Whatever. And usually my excuse is I'm too old. So in addition, it can affect your relationships with others. When we are filled with fear, we may lash out or say hurtful things to those closest to us without even realizing it. So most of the time, it's because the other person takes what we say the wrong way. Usually it's not necessarily the other person is so wrong. Usually it takes two people. So words are often misconstrued, and although you didn't intend damage, damage is done. So when you give up the wheel, fear might look insignificant and devastating. Or you can identify your area of fear or fears with a plural. Or fearful self-talk eventually comes out in words. Those are the things, this is kind of summing up what I've just talked about. And fear-based self-talk holds you back from your full potential. So just think over those things that I just shared. You don't want to go here. You want to get control of this. You want to allow God to help you to be in victory. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel. So have a wonderfully blessed day.